Welcome. We're here today to talk about social emotional learning, and next week is SEL Day. And so we wanted to share some ideas about how to celebrate uh, SEL Day. And we're going to be joined in a second by some panelists to start talking about ways that they are sharing social emotional learning with their children and students and the kids they work with. And I'd love to have questions from you about how you can uh, practice SEL yourself. And if you have questions that you want to ask, that'd be great. I wanted to take a moment before we start. One of the people in the 6 Seconds community who's been a real champion of social emotional learning is named Ayman Sawaf, and Ayman passed away this weekend. Ayman was a member of the 6 Seconds board. He created Enchanté Entertainment and created numerous books for children and movies, and helped us be really committed to help everyone make friends with feelings, children and adults. And I was just looking at a video that we made with Ayman where he said, "Emotions are the way my heart and soul speaks to me." And so I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you, Ayman, and I miss you. And that is one of the parts of social emotional learning, is for us to learn to be able to feel our feelings and to see them as valuable. And it was a big gift to me to have Ayman's help learning about emotions. So with that, I would like to bring in our panelists and talk a little bit about what social emotional learning is, and then why it works. So I'm springing this on you, but does anyone want to share, in your view, what is social emotional learning?
I will go first.
Yay.
Hi, I'm Mayaka. I just came here like last year, but I've been doing like social emotional learning virtual spaces in Japan. I keep doing this platform. And for me, it's the best way to increase the feelings of safety, connectedness, and confidence. Like our platform name is Daijoubu, and which means like in Japanese word, but we are fine, we can do this, like we are all right, like that positive feelings. Like I wouldn't say positive feelings, like that feelings of a safety, connectedness, and confidence. So and we are sure that SEO can help us to know yourself and connect with others and also increase your Daijoubu feeling. So we are doing SEO.
And it's a time when we could use some more of those daijobu feelings.
Yeah.
But how would you literally translate daijobu?
Um, Daijoubu is like technically, it's really interesting, very Japanese type of word. When you're not fine, you can say daijoubu. That's really Japanese way, I think. Yeah, because we're really hesitant to show like the real us. But yeah, that daijoubu is something like has really energy inside, and we can spell on us like daijoubu, we can do this, like daijoubu, we're fine because we've done a lot, like yeah, like make us like more comfortable to do something.
Like a willingness, readiness.
Mm, yeah.
Brittany, Natalie, how about you? What is social emotional learning?
Lately, I've been describing it as just grounding myself in me, and just getting to know the emotions that we as humans deal with on a regular basis. And as Ayaka said, creating and fostering those safe spaces. Oftentimes in workplaces, emotions are seen as negative. You're so emotional, or we want to keep them hidden. And so, social emotional intelligence to me is just creating those spaces for people to be authentically who they are and giving space and grace for people to learn and grow. I know that like I'm still on that journey of just grounding myself in me. I'm teaching my kids to ground themselves in them and their emotions, and then use them as data to help us begin to make wiser choices and decisions as we learn how to connect with different people and spaces.
Well, I'm just remembering another thing Ayman used to say, which is that it's like emotions are like an email from you to you. and, and you got to open the email to get the information. And if we think about social emotional learning as a process in schools to help us connect with ourselves, connect with each other, and to create the conditions for all other learning. We know that emotions have primacy in the human brain. And we also know that it's not that the social interaction helps learning, it's that literally learning occurs in the social brain. And so our social and emotional context, it's not like, oh, it would be nice if those things were happening in school. It's actually the social emotional context which determines the effectiveness of school. So learning is first a social experience, and second, and this is true for adults, by the way, it's your social brain that's working when you're learning something new. And I think this is really important for us if we care about people learning, whatever their age. We need to recognize that learning is um, fundamentally a social and emotional process. So, Natalie, when somebody says to you, why are you doing this social emotional stuff? What do you say?
I think that, well, since I started with Circle I think that it was a huge change for me because I remember that we were just tutoring children. Uh, they were coming from Syria and they had a lot of traumatic experiences and stuff like that. And we said, well, what can we do to really make a meaningful impact, not only just to give them what they need at a school, but something that is truly going to help them thrive. And that's why we started kind of exploring the concept about social emotional learning. And what we discovered is that it was like education per se is it's social and emotional, as you were saying, Josh, and that gives them the tools for them to thrive, for them to get them to know themselves better, for them to really discover that they can make peace with their emotions and really use that as data just to make better decisions, right? We started seeing that the gap between genders, right, started to close, that the transition between an Eastern to a Western society was better, and the empathy levels started just to grow. So to me, like, why do I do this? Because the world needs a better place right now. And what about if we foster empathy and we foster concepts where education is going to actually give that a space to our children, to our families? And that's the reason why I truly believe in SEL, and it's just a way for them to really flourish in a complex world while they are trying to face these challenges that the world gives them.
Hmm. What seems like all over the world, there's some resistance to talking about emotions, and some this message that, oh, we should just go back to basics and leave emotions out of it. Ayaka, you work in lots of different places and a lot in Japan. Uh, so what do you see in terms of different cultural perspectives on talking about emotions?
That's my hot topic right now. Since I came here last summer, I really feel that how I feel. So emotion is something that, like chemical signal, like that comes from naturally. We cannot be intentional what emotion comes out, but yeah, we can, like, what do you say? We can adjust our mood or health usually, but the exact feeling is just coming naturally. But those feelings are so different where, like, depending on where you are.
Hmm.
When I was in Japan, like no, well, so I still have my community with Japanese people, and they said when they got COVID, they felt I'm sorry.
Hmm.
But here, I've never thought about that. like my neighborhood, like my neighbors got COVID, but they say like it was really rough. You don't have to. You shouldn't get any COVID. Yeah, like that. That's it. But in Japan, we can feel like I'm sorry. Well, naturally, and I can easily imagine that. And so, like social norm, like invisible social context, has really big impact on us. Why emotion comes out. So I don't know what I can do about this, but and I'm sure that SEO process can help them to understand what I'm feeling now and why this emotion's coming like from inside right now.
Mm.
And if they can find this is like because I'm caring too much like other people, or I'm really not too much but a lot a lot about this team. So I really feel that this team is important to me, so I feel this way, or
Mm.
whatever. Yeah, so just stop the moment, reflect yourself. That's how we use like EQ or social emotional learning, but that helps a lot to understand your feeling like in different angles.
Mm. So emotions are within us, and emotions are also social.
Mm.
Brittany, do you have any thoughts to add about this kind of social context of emotions and kind of what's happening with the kids in your school?
Yes, as an assistant principal, this year has been tough, to be honest. Kids in where I am in Memphis, they're coming back off of being virtual for a year and a half. And many have experienced loss, death from like immediate families. Um, and so they're coming back into a space that has a lot of structure and being away with different types of structure of learning virtual. And now the mandates of sitting still or being in class or changing class is bringing a lot of anxiety. But at the same time, as a coach and assistant principal, trying to balance the needs of children and also knowing that adults, my teachers, are still struggling after being at home, which is a safe place for them, not being around people that could potentially um, pass COVID or give you COVID. And now all the demands of lesson planning, being prepared, being on quote unquote on stage for children on a daily basis, the demands of testing. And so socially, it's just, to be honest, it's been rough. And so for me, I've been challenging myself as I coach teachers and the leaders that I work with, is that we're constantly modeling how to display empathy for children. What does that sound like in our voice? What does that sound like when we're engaging with a child that has a behavioral challenge? And then what does it look like to still give empathy for a teacher who might not bring their best while still holding a level of expectation? So empathy has been so very important. And again, still making it okay to have emotions in the workplace. A line that I gave yesterday and that I'm often using is reminding educators we're struggling as an adults. And so we have 9-year olds, 10-year olds, 4-year olds, 5-year olds trying to bring meaning to all of this. And as adults, we're still learning how to do it.
Mm. Yeah. Natalie, how about in your communities where you work? What's kind of changing or new for you in SEL at this stage of the pandemic and just 2022?
I think that the main challenge is being probably it resonates the same thing that Brittany just said, is the change from that the pandemic just it has brought like such a complex platform for youth and for children to properly interact with each other, that even, for example, the youth that I work with, sometimes they are in the same space and you can have them there and they don't know how to even ask a question. So that per se, just like that simple concept about us as humans, as social animals, is starting to get lost, just because of the challenges of the pandemic, or even like the younger kids that they don't know how to express probably like their emotion at some point, that they can become a little bit like in that excitement, right? They can become a little bit aggressive. So those are some of the challenges that we are facing, and the big swings are huge. The I feel like we are seeing more adverse childhood experiences in children, and it's more noticeable on the anxiety levels, depression, and all these different type of things that probably we as teachers, social workers, educators, we were not seeing as often, and now it's a reality. And I think that when we ask, or at least like if we ask someone that we love, like what would you like for that person? You want that person to be happy, you want that person to be whole, to be well, more than learning math or science or any of these different type of things. And I think that that's the component that SEL has, that brings to the picture that how can we equip you and have the tools for you to navigate through those emotions and still feel whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this last 2 years, a lot of us have come to realize that if we don't have well-being, none of the other stuff really matters. And I think that that's a big challenge for schools because they perceive that they are, and they literally are measured by a bunch of outcomes that are really well-being isn't even on the list in many states for what schools are supposed to be delivering. And yet none of the other work can happen if well-being isn't there. Creates a tension, I think, for like what do we prioritize and how do we think about the way we use our time. Brittany, I see you nodding. I'm guessing you've been having some of these conversations with your teachers.
Yes, like there is, like you said, Josh, there is no roadmap. And well-being it takes precedence over everything, just well-being for children, well-being for ourselves as leaders, well-being for our teachers. And it's like we're still kind of building this plane in the sky as we navigate through all of this uncertainty. Our theme right now is, are the children well? But at the same time, are our teachers well? And then exactly what are we going to do about it while still trying to keep up with still the demands that our job requires?
Yeah, so I think sometimes we might see wellness as in competition with the other priorities.
Absolutely.
And somehow we need to shift the conversation to say, this is how we reach our priorities, whatever they are. And us being healthy, emotionally, physically, in terms of our communities, in terms of equity, in terms of the places that we live. If this is not a healthy place, we're not going to do the other work effectively. Well, let's go to the chat for a second and ask people who are here, would you please share with us what's new for you in these last couple of years as you've been learning about social emotional learning, as you've been working with kids and adults? Is there something that's new for you? Is there something that's changing? Something that's changing for me is that there's a lot more awareness about mental health, and that the idea that mental health is something, there's a clinical part of mental health, but there's also a part of mental health that's everyone's, that's just part of being healthy. Mental health is health, and therefore we need to get more skills with emotions. So that's something that I'm hearing more and more. And while I'm sorry that sorry isn't strong enough, while I'm devastated that there's this huge number of people who are really struggling in painful, profound ways with their mental health, I'm glad that the conversation is much more open to say we all need skills for increasing mental health.
And I
What else
think,
is new?
Josh, that based on what you just said, I read not long ago that the World Health Organization, they said that health is not only the lack of sickness, but it is a holistic perspective where you include your physical, your spiritual, your mental, and your emotional health. And I think that just changes the dynamics also of how we see it. Just understanding that it is not only about not having a headache or not feeling these different type of things, but being a little bit more aware of what are my needs. And I think that social emotional learning also brings that component about just having that empathy, as Brittany was saying, towards others, but also towards ourselves. Especially educators and social workers are experiencing something that is like that compassion fatigue. And they're starting to just be desensitized with the things, even though they are there sometimes because that's their passion, right? And 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 it creates a struggle because at the same time it becomes a cycle if you're unaware of it, that the children are looking for a safe platform where they can build trust, and the educators or social workers or people that are actively in that education process, if they are not being taken care of or they are not well, they can come and go really quick, and the turnover starts becoming an issue as well within our system. And that gives that sense of not stability in our system. And probably you may know more, Brittany, because like you are more like in the academic field, right? And but I have seen that with the teachers, that when we coach or when we have these different type of conversations about that journey towards well-being, how can they decrease that compassion fatigue that they're having.
I'm going to bring in this comment from Ashley Tucker, a wonderful SEL educator in New York. And I think that this is really great news that there's more room, time, appreciation for doing this work. I'm curious about this other comment from Ashley. Are others seeing this as well, that kids are like even more than they were just 2 years ago, kind of fixated on technology? Brittany's nodding her head.
I'm so glad that Ashley, hey friend, we've been able to partner on some SEO projects together. So it's nice to see her here. But this idea of being dependent on devices is real, because they've been virtual for a year and a half. But even on that, I am dealing with that in my own house. It's almost like if they don't have a device, I'm bored. Or if I'm not on the computer or tablet, I'm bored. And still, also, we're seeing in the classrooms, because a lot of state tests for most states are still paper and pencil. So getting away from the electronic devices, or as Ashley said, trying to find that healthy balance to teach children at home and parents and at school, how can we use these devices in a healthy manner? This past weekend, my son actually he lost his electronic device, and it's like, I'm bored. I'm bored. And so we had to sit in that emotion a little bit of just what do you do when your children become bored because they don't have a device? And we're also seeing it at school. And so accepting that as an emotion, and then also allowing them to navigate through that. What do you say back when they're bored without taking offense or taking it personal? But how can we foster this idea of electronics, which are going to be here and continue to evolve, in a way that fosters a healthy use? And when they don't have it, that they don't feel like they have no creativity or they don't have anything to do.
Ayaka, your kids are 6 and 8, is that right?
7 and 8. And
7 and 8.
actually, yeah, so that's also my hot topic. Actually, like yesterday, I got a notice from the school that my son needs glasses. And I was like, oh, what? Like he's like really playful and he's really loved to play outside. But yes, at the same time, he loves, like, he's crazy about Minecraft with iPad. And like that's last 2 years. So in Japan, we didn't do like what do you say, lockdown of the schools a lot, but when we were there, but we were quarantined like by ourselves, like intentionally. And I was working from home and tried to give them like some tools to study or like something to enjoy themselves. But yes, I allowed them to use iPad, like, okay, 30 minutes a day or something. Like they helped me a lot, like washing dishes or like folding clothing. Okay, you got 30 minutes more. Like I I thought like that's how we like how much we were struggling like about like being together at home like 24 hours a day. But yeah, we got notice from the school yesterday, and so we did a small EQ session, SEL session with kids. So what's our goal in this case? So we happened this one, like you got a notice of that you have you need to use glasses. This happened from where? But like zero iPad is not a solution. And yeah, why you wanna get? Why you need this? And yes, he said like, but without iPad, I would get easily bored. But I know, I know. But like, okay, then what can be substitute of the iPad using iPad? Or yeah, we had a lot of discussion, not discussion, but conversation last night, and we couldn't finish at all. And we will have the rest or like forever continuing like tonight or sometime soon. But yeah, like it's but still like about using iPad or not, or how to use our time can be one of the topic of SEO at home.
I,
Yes, it's a topic that has a lot of emotions.
I commend you, Ayaka, for having that conversation. There's an article that I found this week because I was doing the same with my kids, from Bridges to Understanding, and it talks about how do you navigate this conversation of being bored. And it stated, don't ignore it. Like at first, like you said, like, what do you mean you're bored? Like, but don't ignore it. Like, okay, I see that you're frustrated. I see and I hear that you're bored. When you're ready for us to talk about ways that we can use our time differently, I'm here for you. But that meant I also had to like be patient and deal with the crying and the why. And so my husband was aggravated, like, we're not having a conversation about this. Like, I'm like, but we are having a conversation about this. And so then I was reading, I was like, okay, let me acknowledge that I'm impatient and frustrated because I've brought art supplies and other things for you to use. And then finally I just asked him, I said, so are you ready? Like, what else can you do with your time? Because you are creative in other ways besides using electronics. And finally, after about 30 minutes, long 30 minutes, it was like, well, maybe I can draw. I have an art project I want to work on. And my son's an excellent drawer. So I said, I think that'd be a good idea. Then he came with, okay, well, maybe I can phone call Chase and we can talk about drawing. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. So now we're communicating with other people. And so it was a process that I was learning in the moment. So I definitely share that with you, Ayaka, as well. Other ways to navigate that.
I mean, I experienced that myself as an adult where I like am sitting waiting for 2 minutes and I'm like, "Oh, I should get out my phone." Right? And there's actually some interesting research, and I'll drop a link in the chat. There's an article on the 6 Seconds website about boredom, and that boredom, we might perceive it as something negative, but boredom is actually really important for us. And it creates a kind of spaciousness that helps us with our creativity, helps us with our problem solving, helps us kind of set context. And so I wonder if to some degree we've trained our brains to be constantly stimulated. And when they're not constantly stimulated, we go, oh, there's something wrong. And if we're losing something, it's losing some capacity for reflection because we have no space. There's no like breathing room for our brains. Okay, well, let's go on to talk about next week is SEL Day. So what's something you're going to do? Maybe it's something you do every week, but what's something you're going to do next week to celebrate social emotional learning? Natalie, let's start with you.
So actually, I have a couple of things planned. There are a couple of games that I usually keep in. I think that that could be a good idea for Brittany, Ayaka, and anybody that wants to just have like a tech-free like option. So we have like a bucket where there are different type of activities which are emotional intelligence related. So it's fun just to even you can use like mason jars and like different papers with kind of challenges where they can just play. So we have some of the pop-up festival activities, for example, the emotional charades. That's a pretty fun one, and it brings a lot of awareness. It makes them a little bit I don't know, more comfortable with expressing their emotions without feeling that, oh, I have to talk about emotions, but really are playing with it. So that's one of the things that we are going to be doing, kind of doing this tech-free bucket activities, like just for next week. So I think that that would be really fun.
And you mentioned emotions charades from the Pop-Up Festival. So in case anybody doesn't know, Pop-Up Festival is the largest social emotional learning project in the world. It's 100% free. It's in partnership with UNICEF World Children's Day. And it's been used in 200 countries by about 3 million children and adults. And there's a ton of great activities. And we'll share some more of them, but I'm just putting in the chat the link to join, and you just sign up, and then you get access to this curriculum. And there's about 70 activities in English, and then there's a variety of some more, some less. In about 25 languages, there's some of those activities. Ayaka, how about you? What are you going to do to celebrate SEL Day?
Yeah, actually, we already had one last weekend with a lot of like people. Yeah, so there is Japanese teacher at Singapore School, Keiko, and also like we have another Japanese teacher at Nueva School. Like those two schools, like well related to 6 seconds. And yeah, we were connected with each other, and we had a lot of people to join us to talk about what if we make SEL school. And that was really fruitful conversation. We just had a space to have conversation. But it was really safe space for everybody else so they can share their thoughts, feeling, and ideas, future action. So that's really good place and easy to have, simple but really powerful. I really recommend you to have that. And also pop-up festival, yes. We will do that next week, pop-up festival and 2 spaces for adults to think about feelings, especially focus on anger this time. Anger towards hope. And the other one is like jealous. So that would be really good topic to share about, like, and just simple but powerful. That's our Daijobu concept. So we will do that.
Thank you. So you mentioned Nueva School, which our co-founder Karen McCown was the founder of Nueva School, and our president Annabelle Jensen was the executive director there. I was a teacher there. One of our other colleagues was an administrator there when we started 6 Seconds. And the self-science process that we publish was originally tested there. And then Synapse School is the school that 6 Seconds started several years ago to be a lab school for what happens when you really integrate social emotional learning. So it's great. We have this Japan team in these schools. What are you going to do, Brittany, next week for SEL Day?
I'm excited to partner with our school counselor. We have 2, one for K through 2, and then another counselor for 3 through 5. and work on just developing more emotional literacy for our kids. So pulling from our 6-second bank, where we partnered with Red Nose Day to create like an emotional literacy pinwheel for children to build more terminology. They know like I'm angry and I'm mad, but like frustrated or irritated, and begin to use them more, and make it a safe space. And another thing, probably for 3 through 5, as I work with our school counselors, we're gearing up for state testing. And so there's a lot of mindset shifts that we're noticing that need to happen with our kids. They're so hard on themselves. And so UCube has a mathematical mindsets rubric that allows children to choose an area of like emotional intelligence that they want to focus on as they're gearing up. You can use it for as you're gearing up for a test. So for example, if they're focusing on beliefs, like I believe in myself, I can do this, I can persevere through this. Or if it's I want to focus on struggle for today, mathematical word problems are very hard or fractions are hard, but I'm going to choose to struggle through this, use my strategies, anchor charts, my notes to help me. So I'm excited to share this with my math team. And hopefully children will continue to use this as they go into their state testing in April, around understanding belief, struggles, strategies, and even like connecting and building off of each other.
I mean, this is an interesting place where we see really directly the intersection of SEL and academic learning. And I think a lot of educators have this perception that, like, oh, well, SEL takes time away from academic learning. I don't have time for that. And what we know from the research is that the opposite is true, that SEL actually facilitates academic learning. And when educators spend a little bit of time on uh, working on increasing emotional awareness, helping children and adults talk about what they're feeling, understand feelings are something normal and helpful, even when they're difficult. So something like testing is actually really an SEL exercise in a lot of ways. It's very stressful. It's takes a tremendous amount of perseverance, and it's not easy. And because it's not easy, a lot of what's not easy about it is emotional. And so it's one of the reasons why schools that have effective social emotional learning programs have a 10 to 11% average higher scores on standardized tests. And I think that this piece about specifically around mindsets and about stress, it's a difficult place, and I wish that we didn't have to do so much of that kind of testing. And it's a great place for us to put in SEL skills. One of our other colleagues couldn't come today because she was administering standardized tests today. You mentioned, Brittany, the Red Nose Day project. And so let me just drop this link in. Red Nose Day is really well known in other places in the world. The United States, it's a little less known, but it's this really beautiful project from Comic Relief to raise funds for kids in poverty. And part of Red Nose Day is celebrating joy and laughter and friendship. And so Brittany and others at 6 Seconds worked on creating a kit for, in partnership with Red Nose Day, for empathy. And there's some really creative, fun activities here. And I think this would be a fantastic way to celebrate Red Nose Day. So there's the wheel that you mentioned. And do you remember what else is in there? There's one that I really like, which is, I think many people are familiar with the idea of love languages. And the team came up with the idea that there were different, almost like, playing on that idea of love languages, there are different ways of expressing empathy. You want to share a little bit about that, Brittany? It was a long time ago. Maybe like
It was a long time ago, but yeah, it was this idea of like we have love language in our relationships and marriages, and if you don't know how your partner receives love if mine's acts of service, and I'm still trying to love Ivan with acts of service, but his is physical touch or affirmation, is not really going to work. And so teaching that on with children, like in a community circle, I think is how we had it set up. But how does your friend like to receive love? And they would create things, and the children would be reminded in their community of, like, I know that Susie likes to receive love this way. I know that Johnny likes to receive love this way. He likes kind words. He likes for you to like give thoughtful things. And so it creates that, again, that safe space that Natalie talked about, of teaching children how to like exist in the same environment. So it's a great activity. And then I do want to lift to the space. Latasha mentioned things that her district is doing in Charlotte. So pulling on things, if you're an educator, that your district is already doing as well. We use the Rethink curriculum here. So don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel to celebrate SEL Day.
Any other suggestions of a favorite SEL activity or question that you wanted to share?
I think that it's also a great opportunity just to bring mindfulness to anywhere that we're gonna just be working with our children, our families, our even like with adults, right? Mindfulness, I think that brings so much, and there are a lot of resources online. I'm pretty sure that you guys have it also in 6 seconds. We have some mindfulness cards which are very helpful, and we host a space like on like every Thursday virtually, and we use that as a way just to bring awareness to different kind of skills. For instance, we have about willpower, about perseverance, about self-care, and I think that mindfulness allows anybody just to be more aware about their breathing, about their imagination, visualization, about the emotions that they're feeling, what they are just going through, all of that that thought process. So I think that that's a very great tool to use. And if you would like to complement it with a small craft afterwards that just talks about the concept or even that imaginary process, that fosters that you were just discussing before, Josh, that can complement even like something academically, goal setting, anything. And I think that that's very powerful.
I want to know more about this virtual scavenger hunt, Ashley. And so if you are going to write it up, please share a link. Maybe you're going to put it in your Instagram. But that's idea of getting, if kids are obsessed with devices, well, we can also use devices and we can do things virtually. I wanted to share an activity which we put together during the pandemic, which is for older kids, called Power Lines. And I think sometimes people have a little bit of trouble thinking about SEL with teenagers. And so the idea I'm putting in the chat, the idea of you kind of thinking about this continuum from powerless to powerful. Now, the prompts in the Power Lines activity are particularly related to climate change, but you could do this with any kind of prompts. You can take this concept and adapt it to relationships or test taking or sports or whatever is going on for kids. But what we have in this activity, and I just put the link in the chat, there are some cards, and you draw a card and you think about where would you put that on this timeline. And you can do it virtually on a digital whiteboard, or you could do it in the room. And kind of what's interesting to me is when you do this with a group of young people, some people feel powerless about X, where other people feel powerful about X. And so then it opens up this really rich conversation about what makes us feel like we have efficacy, what makes us feel like we can make a difference about this. Anyway, we tested this for our Green 13 kit. So the Sustainable Development Goal number 13 is a healthy climate. And so this is part of the Green 13 kit, and there's a whole set of activities specifically around climate anxiety. And this seems to be a place where, for teenagers, there's interest in SEL, but many teenagers are very interested in climate. And so this is a place where we can kind of bring these things together with what they're interested in. And, really, like I said, anything that's challenging creates an opportunity for us to really dig into our social emotional learning skills.
Yeah, I want to share something. So, my daughter is taking note like emoji diary every day, because like she's more like she's really loves to drawing, and also like she is a little difficult with like get to why or with verbal communication like but I had this emoji faces this day and what happened to me and reflect with together with her. That helps her a lot to search her emotions and what made her feel in that way. Plus, in Daijobu community, we had like twice a month pop-up festival virtually. And there, we often do the emotion map, feelings map in English, but strength, strong, weak, comfortable, uncomfortable, and even using like Emma Monster or whatever, like those feelings things and plot them. But yeah, like as Josh said, like some kids like this feeling is like here, but for other kids it's here. Like it happens a lot. And ask why or what made you feel in that way. And they say they shared thoughts or feelings and okay, there's another perspective and broaden your thoughts and views. That's really beautiful moment. I feel that knowing other perspectives makes you feel more comfortable or confident about how you are. So that's why I really love EQSEL, like in a safe place, knowing other options. So yeah, this is again like Japanese context, but like being different is like something we have to be careful sometimes. So, but in SEO space, EQ space, we can be free to talk, free to share about your feelings, and we can be different, and that's natural. That's more natural. And so, yeah, this is really powerful, especially Japanese kids, adults. But yeah, this is about everybody else, I think.
This piece about how do I fit in, about conformity is, I think, something that most people struggle with, and in certain cultures, it's that struggle becomes really brutal. This topic of conversation of in SEL, we often talk about the idea of perspective taking, which just means being able to see things from other points of view and being able to see, oh, can I see this from Ayaka's point of view? Or could I see this from like, oh, what was this like for me when I was younger? What might it be like for me when I'm older? That's a form of perspective taking. And being able to look and see from different perspectives is a really simple idea that turns out to be really profoundly powerful. And thank you for sharing that, Ayaka. I wanted to also mention the idea of check-ins. One of the simplest ways for us to practice social emotional skills is with a brief check-in. And we can do that with our kids at home. We can do that with our kids in math class at any time at school. And I think a lot of times parents will ask a question like, how was your day? And the answer to that is always fine. So I'm curious, with your own kids or your kids in school, what's a question that you would ask that's more interesting and meaningful than how is your day? And in the chat, I would love to have you share what are your check-in questions that are more interesting. And I'm also going to put in the chat an article of some check-in activities that work well in person or online. So if you're looking for virtual check-ins, there's some there from Dr. Eliza Johnson, and also work in the classroom. So what's a question you would ask for a more interesting check-in, Natalie?
One of the things that we usually ask is, what was the highest moment of your day and what was the lowest moment of your day? And when we just talk about that, for example, they can say, oh, I was able to just finish with my test. So it's like, okay, so tell me how you were feeling at the very beginning before you started your test, and what happened afterwards. So it starts kind of building up like more the acknowledgement of the conversation. So I usually like use the highest and the lowest moment. That way we can just go through that emotional awareness.
Someone else have one? That made me think about also like what was surprising about your day, or what was something unusual about your day. Latasha, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How did you connect with your friends today?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of really rich questions we could ask about friends. Like, what's something that one of your friends needed today? Other check-in questions? What do you ask your kids, Brittany, when they come home from? Well, do you see them? Are they in your school, or they're in a different school?
No, they're in a different school.
So what do you ask them when they come home?
So I had to switch mine up because, to your point, my son is he loves single words. Nope, fine. That's how he is. So I'm like, I pay attention to his newsletters more, which has been helpful because he's like, how do you know that? So it might just be like, if I know PE's on Tuesday, like, how was PE today? Or, for example, Dr. Seuss's Day is coming up, Read Across America. So it's on their newsletter. So I can say, what activities did you do for Read Across America today? So I do try to pay attention to the newsletters that come home, because their teachers do a really good job of posting specific things, as well as testing. And so, like, how do you think you did on your test today? So just different things that are more targeted, and I get different answers. Now, my daughter, I can just ask, how was your day? And I'll get everything under the sun. We ate this for lunch. We ate this for breakfast. I saw my favorite person. So I try to just tailor it to which child I'm speaking to in the moment.
Yeah, that's a good point, that, different things work for different people. Back to our love languages. I remember when my kids were probably 7 and 9, asking them how they were feeling, one of them how they were feeling about something, and the answer was, I don't know. And so I got out these cards, which many of you will have seen before, but they're the moon face cards, and they're really beautifully expressive. And so we just have them out on the table. And when they wouldn't always do it, sometimes they're like, I don't want to look at the cards, but sometimes they would kind of flip through the cards, and just having a little basket of them around really opened up some conversations that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, like a little ago, but we were using emo monsters, and just put the card on the wall, and this is my feeling today, and that's it. But sometime at the dining table, like, hey, what's your monster? What was like your monster? Like, what's telling you? Or that conversation. But because like, yeah, my kids are still like 8 and 7 there, so I can't be I can't give them like complicated question. Simple, shorter question, they love it. So like, hey, describe your day with animal. Like, that's our check-in question.
So, and the emo monsters, they made them?
Yeah. Like once a month. And sometimes they are super creative using like, I need more paper. Yeah, this day, like I need like 3D one, or like but here angry, but here like satisfied, or like, yeah, they're so creative. They're like kind of professional creating emo monster now.
So it's one of the pop-up festival activities, and I'm finding it in a lot of different languages. So if I can find the emo monster, there we go. I found the emo monster activity in English, so I'll post the link in the chat. But there's it's also in a lot of other languages. I wanted to just go to this question from Sherilyn that I think is two beautiful questions that could lead to a conversation, again, in school or out of school. And the metaphor of red lights and green lights, I think, things that help us go forward, times we need to stop, things we need to be cautious about. And I think kids and adults, we all want more connectedness. So thank you for sharing those. And I'll drop the link to the Emo Monster activity. The link to join the pop-up festival will give you access to the whole kit and instructions and free mentors and support for bringing these skills wherever you are in the world. And so I highly recommend that you that you join the pop-up festival. And I just want to mention that if you run an organization, we have pop-up festival partners. And so there's the regular link to join, but there's also a link to partner. And so if you're running a school or a nonprofit or a community organization or an agency, and you want to be even more involved, then check out the partner link. All right, so last thought for today. What are you taking away?
Well, this was a great space. I think that just to start building like that excitement about SEL Day, for the ones that probably didn't know anything about it, just to start kind of getting their curiosity about the importance of social emotional learning. And I mean, I feel super excited about just using some of these resources that you're sharing with us as well, Josh. Just being able to have a conversation with Ayaka and Brittany, and knowing that there's such a big community that is also working towards that, being more aware about the importance of it and how it can be life changing in education and in everything for our children and educators.
Wonderful summary, Natalie. Thank you. Brittany.
I feel the same. I enjoyed this space with you, Josh, and Ayaka and Natalie. And I'm taking away just connection as we get ready to celebrate SEL. Just asking yourself in whatever space or job or setting, just how can you connect better with your children? How can you connect better with those around you in your workspace? And then finding a simple activity to go with it as we head into SEL Day celebration. And then if you have a favorite one, then just challenging yourself to continue that in all your spaces.
Thanks, Brittany. Ayaka, keyword for today?
For me, it was like safety and hope. Because like I could feel like yeah, these days I really feel that yes, we can learn how to give classes, what to do in SEO class, but it's not enough, never enough. How we are is the best textbook. So, but here I felt like yes, we can do this with these people. Yeah. So, and I am really happy to be here today. Thank you so much, and people on the chat as well. And yeah, let's SEO.
How We Are is the best textbook. I want it on a t-shirt. Thank you all. Thanks for watching, everyone. And please feel free to ask more questions in the comments, and we'll come back and answer. And we'll look forward to seeing you on another live stream or webinar coming up soon. And in case, I'll just put in one more plug here. which is, in case you don't know, we have an events calendar that's got tons of events happening really every week, almost every day. There's free events and classes and programs that you can join if you want to learn more. So check out the event calendar. Thank you, everybody.